billion rand worth of cocaine stolen from a Colombian cartel, and Cape Town gang bosses murdered because of it. This is the story of Peter Jaggers and Associates, and it runs deep into the underworld of drugs in South Africa. It started on the 26th of March 2024, when the Maritime Authority of South Africa received information about a group of fishermen stuck at sea. Apparently, they ran out of fuel about 130 kilometers from Simonstown and needed rescue. But there's more to this story than meets the eye. The stretch of water they were rescued from is called the South African Drug Route and had long been operated by the Terrible Josters gang, known abalone poachers. The gang had boats, vessels, and divers who could go out to sea as fishermen and collect drugs dropped by Colombian drug vessels passing by, get the product to shore, and hand it over to the Bulgarian mafia operating most of the cocaine trade in South Africa. The operation worked by attaching GPS trackers to barrels filled with everything from guns to cocaine and sharing the location with the supposed fishermen who could easily find it. But when the group of fishermen were rescued in March, they were empty-handed, and the reasoning behind it will shock and impress you. Peter Jaggers was a leader in the Terrible Josters, and it is alleged that he planned to fool his Colombian partners into believing that they either got robbed of the drug shipment or couldn't find it in the rough waters. But the truth was that Jaggers had organized a separate boat to pick up the drugs and planned to use the news of his rescued counterparts as cover. However, he made one mistake. The Colombians didn't care whether the Josters gang received the drugs or not. They didn't get paid for their product, and that's all that mattered. The Colombians immediately sent a hitman to track down Jaggers and the missing drugs. Jaggers allegedly organized the pickup of the drugs after his fishermen were rescued and laid low for a couple of months while plotting his next move. And his next move was a sneaky one. In July, Jaggers and his associate William Peterson took a flight from Cape Town to Johannesburg and booked into the Emperor's Palace Hotel. It is alleged that the partners had struck a deal with the Bulgarians to sell them the cocaine anyway and cut the Colombians out of the deal, the oldest trick in the book. But the Colombians expected this, and when the Bulgarians arrived to pick up Jaggers and Peterson, they were greeted by a Colombian hitman, kidnapped and driven to a desolate location. The Bulgarians were never going to betray the Colombians for one shipment. They knew how powerful they were, and just like that, the tables had turned on Jaggers. 2 days go by, and after not hearing from her husband, Peter Jaggers' wife reported him missing at the Bishop Lavis police station. Shortly after this, she is contacted by the Colombians, demanding the return of their stolen drugs, or she would never see her husband again. She informed Jaggers' associates, and they reached out to the Colombians on the number Jaggers' wife was contacted from, asking how they can work this out and if they could work for the gang to pay back the debt. But the Colombians made it simple. 50 million rand was their price, and if they couldn't get it, they shouldn't even bother contacting them again, and it would be the end of Jaggers and his partner. At this stage, no one knew where the drugs were or what had happened to it, and whether the Josters had it or not. They couldn't come up with the 50 million rand on such short notice. Jaggers and his partner's fate was sealed. Fast forward to October, when a man walking along the edge of the Vaal River in the Free State spotted an eerie sight in the water under a bridge. 2 bodies, wrapped in black plastic, bound by chains and sandbags tied to their feet. It was Jaggers and his partner, murdered in cold blood. Police suspect that the partners were tortured for months about the shipments, and when they didn't crack, they were chained, wrapped in plastic, and thrown in the river alive. The Colombian cartels are known for severely punishing people who defy them, and in this case, they had to make an example to anyone who would even think about doing something like this again. News of Jaggers' death sent shockwaves through the country, and no one could believe how far the Colombian cartels would go when taunted. It was like something out of a movie or the series Narcos, and many other collaborators were fearing for their life. One of those was Mr. Zulu, real name Suhai Mohammed, a known associate of Jagger and the Josters. Mr. Zulu was shot in November outside Jaggers' house and severely injured, sparking concerns that gang violence is flaring up again with the Josters' gang boss gone. Valhalla Park and Kalksteenfontein are out of control. With him, Jaggers, out of the way, someone else would want to take over, and it will be more than one person, a police chief said. A recent rise in shootings have seen multiple gang bosses arrested and assassinated, including recently Mark Liffman, leaving the sinister Cape Town underworld up for grabs. With major gang bosses behind bars, younger up-and-coming bosses see this as a power-grabbing opportunity, and they will go to crazy lengths to cement their power. Scenes of Jaggers' funeral sparked more questions than answers. An elaborate service with Rolls Royces carrying the bodies, a crowd mourning and high-level gang bosses attending has raised suspicions that Jaggers had sacrificed himself, along with his partner, knowing that they would surely meet their end for a shipment of drugs worth 1 billion rand. This would create immense wealth for his gang and immense respect after he's gone. These questions may never be answered, but the gang wars will continue. As the dynamic in Cape Town streets constantly change, we will never know who is next. From the security industry and extortion mafia, intimidation and violence, to the drug underworld, international mafias, and complex smuggling, no one really understands how intricate and prolific Cape Town is and what role it plays in criminal networks. With its strategic location on the tip of Africa, it's not hard to believe that a lot of big players have interest in controlling the underworld doings, and it's obvious that a lot of money is involved. While we speak, new leaders are plotting their come-up, and while to some it's only news, civilians in neighborhoods live in constant fear of being caught in the crossfire. A forte of different gangs are active in Cape Town, and most are known to us, the 28s, 7s, and 6s. Part of them, the Americans, the Terrible Josters, the sexy boys and gangs in Ugly Town. But we forget that most of these gangs are just middlemen or workers for bosses, and they carry out instructions. The real bosses are guys like Nafiz Modak, Mark Liftman, Donkey Buison, Ralph Stanfield, and the late Cyril Bika. These are the names that have control over the majority of underworld doings and get the earlier mentioned gangs to do the dirty work in exchange for cash, keeping their hands clean. But this is coming to an end after the murder of policeman Charles Kinnear. There has been a crackdown on these bosses, and many fear there will be no end. But was there ever an end? We are the bystanders, and most of the time we know about happenings after and not before. But what we can predict is that there will be a lot more to cover, and we will continue to do so. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.